Okay, sige. So yun. We have the applications involving right triangles. So this is more of a review. We've done this in the previous lectures. So let's try to solve lang a problem for this one. So yun. Okay, the question is a safety regulation states that the maximum angle of elevation for a rescue ladder is 72 degrees. A fire department's longest ladder, okay, is 110 feet. The question is, what is the maximum rescue height? So yun, what is asked in the problem is we are to find the maximum rescue height. We are to find the maximum rescue height or the maximum height nga pwede ma-reach naton ladder. If you have a building that looks something like this, then you have a ladder. Okay, you have a ladder. And the maximum angle of elevation for the rescue ladder is 72 degrees lang. And the height, the length of your ladder is 110 feet. We can isolate a right triangle from this figure right here. So if our right triangle looks something like this, say if this is 110 feet and 72 degrees, we can find the maximum height the ladder can reach. So what function should we be using? Sine pala. So sine theta is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Okay, so since our angle is 72 degrees, sine of 72 is equal to the opposite, which is h over 110. So h therefore, this is in feet, h therefore is equal to 110 sine of 72. What's the value of your h? 104.62 watt. Okay. So, yun. Do you have any question? Basic. Substitution lang. Okay? Sige. So, for the next two problems, kayo na yung mag-solve. After siguro 10 minutes, I'll be asking what's your answer. And you'll be sharing your answer. So, yun. What's your answer? For example number 2. Forgot to write the numbers. So this is example number 2 and this is example number 3. So what's your answer for example number 2? 7.7. How about example 3? 125.37 feet. Okay, how about the others? Any other answer? So let's try to solve the problems. Okay, so for example number 2, it says here in the problem that the swimming pool is 20 meter long and 12 meters wide. The bottom of the pool is slanted so that the water depth is 1.3 at the shallow end and 4 meters at the deep end. And so for this one, we're considering the length of the pool na meron siyang shallow end tsaka deep end. So if we try to draw that one, it would look something like this. So for this one, this is the kumbaga your water level. Your natural water level or NWL na lang. Okay, and this is your shallow end. Okay, this is your shallow end, that is 1.3 meters, and for the deep end naman, that is 4 meters, and the length of the pool is 20 meters. So we have to find the angle of the depression of the pool. So okay, so from this inverted nya right triangle, we can say that the angle of depression, so let's just name that one as theta, is equal to what? The opposite over the adjacent. Tangent theta is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. Wherein our opposite for this one is the difference between 4 meters and 1.3 meters. So what is the difference between those two values? 4. So that is 2.7. So 2.7 over 20. We can find now the value of our theta. So tangent theta is equal to 2.7 over 20, or theta is equal to the arc tangent. Okay, the arc tangent of 2.7 over 20. Maram na kamo kung how do you manipulate your calculator? Do you have calculator na with you? It is a requirement when you're enrolled in the civil engineering program. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how to okay, I'm gonna show you how to use your calculator. Say you have the say you have the FX 570 ES plus. Okay, so in order for us to find the the value of the angle, so arctangent kala. How do you do that? You shift you press shift and tangent, then input the values 2.7 over 20. So this is now the value of your angle, 7.688, or let's just say that it's almost equal to 7.7 degrees. 7.7 degrees. Okay, so questions? How about, for example, number 3? The problem says that at a point 200 feet from the base of the factory, the angle of elevation to the bottom of the smokestack is 35 degrees, whereas the angle of elevation to the top is 53 degrees. We are to find the height of the smokestack. So, marang ko na smokestack. Magat chimney. Pero iba-iba chimney. Kaya kuan. Yeah, kumbaga, this is your building. Excuse me. And you have the smokestack right here. Okay. The angle of elevation at the bottom of the smokestack is equal to what? That is equal to 35 degrees. And at the top naman is equal to 53 degrees. So how do we find the height of the smokestack? This is 200 feet. Okay, so again, we're gonna use tangent lang. The tangent of, say, let's name this one as H and this one as S. So the tangent of, let's just use first the 35 degrees. So 35 degrees is equal to H over 200 feet. Your H therefore is equal to 200 times the tangent of 35 degrees. And for the next one naman, so again, tangent lagi hapon, but we're gonna use the 53 degrees na. Tangent of 53 degrees is equal to your total height. So that would be S plus H, wherein your H is equivalent to 200 tangent 35 all over 200. Okay, so doing cross multiplication, we have S plus, let's just substitute the value of H directly na lang, plus 200 tangent of 35 degrees equal to 200 times the tangent of 53 degrees. Okay, so your S is equal to 200 times the tangent of 53 degrees minus 200 times the tangent of 35 degrees. So your S is equal to 125.37 feet. Okay, so do you have the same answer? Okay, sige. Question. Next. So next example for our applications. The next topic for our applications is the trigonometry and your bearings. So this is quite useful in engineering and surveying and navigation. The use of bearings. Okay, so a bearing is the measure of the acute angle that a path or line of sight makes with the fixed north or south line. So for example, if you have this direction, so we have north, south, east, and west. So your reading for this angle is 45 degrees. Okay, this is 45 degrees northwest, and you write that one as n 45 degrees. Tas kung may pa minutes, 00 minutes. Tas kung may pa seconds, 00 seconds. Okay, so for this one, that's 45 degrees lang. So that would be n 45 degrees east or 45 degrees northeast. For this one naman, this will be a 60 degrees northwest. So that would be n 60 degrees W. So that is 60 degrees northwest. And for the last one, that would be, okay, so automatic ang it always starts from either north or south. So that would be 30 degrees southwest. So S 30 degrees west. Okay. Do you have any question? Gamitin niya yung this will be useful in your surveying, particularly if you're computing for the area of the a lot. And you can measure on dimensions. Basic trigonometry is very useful. Example. So ito. The question is, a ship leaves port at noon and heads due west at 20 knots, or that is 20 nautical miles per hour. Okay. At 2 p.m., the ship changes its course to 54 degrees northwest. We are to find the ship's bearing and distance from the port of departure at 3 p.m. Okay, so how do we solve this problem? Any idea? So for this particular problem, again, we're gonna use bearing. So the problem states that the ship leaves at noon and it headed due west. Okay, so at noon time, say the ship is somewhere here at noon time and it headed due west at 20 knots or 20 nautical miles. So nagtipakadi ha, west. Okay, at 20 nautical miles. Okay, and after 2 hours, the ship changes its course to 54 degrees northwest. So from here, okay, nag-change yan course to 54 degrees northwest. And question was, we are to find the ship's bearing and distance from the port of departure at 3 p.m. Okay? So yun. Again, from this point at 12 noon, it traveled 20 knots or 20 nautical miles for 2 hours. So that would be, if you're going to compute the distance traveled by the ship after 2 hours, so that would be 20 times 2. Okay? 20 nautical mile per hour times 2 hour, that would be 40 nautical mile, or yun, nautical mile. 40 knots. And at 3 p.m., so 1 hour later, after niya mag-change in course, so that would be 20 times 1. So this is this length is equal to 20. And we are to find the ship's bearing and the distance from the port. So from here up to the point after 3 p.m., we are to find that distance. So let's change colors. Okay, so we are to find that distance. So in order for us to solve this problem, okay, ganito lang yan. We need to find the sum of all the x values, or kumbaga the sum of all the x components. So let's just write it here. So the sum of all x component. Okay, so anon mga pa-x ng mga direction. So this one and the component of this line right here. So that would be 40 plus the component of this one. Okay, so how do you find the x component for this one? Kumbaga may dat niya the x component ngan y component. I'll try to use another color kay para diri malipat. So yun. For this 20 right here, you have an x component and a y component. The question is, how will you find the value of the x component and the y component for this distance with a bearing? For your x component, you can use the sine value, or you can use the cosine value but using another angle. So if you try to use this value of the angle right here, you use the sine value. So that would be 20 sine of 54 degrees. Okay, the sum of all your x component should be 40 plus the 20 sine of this angle. Okay, and the sum of your y component is tanan niya may the y value. Samanlan imong y value din ni this 20 right here. So that would be 20 cosine of 54 degrees. Okay, so what's the value of your summation of x? Please compute. 11.756, and for this one 56.18. Okay, so the distance therefore Okay, the distance therefore of the ship from the port at 3 p.m. will be equal to this one. Okay, ginextend ko lang, I mean, gimbalhin ko lang nga di, tapos inihiya din plus this one. I'll just put it right at the bottom. So I have this right triangle right here. We now have the values of the summation of the all x values. That is, this is 56.18. And the sum of all the y values is equal to 11.756. The question is, how can we find the value of this red line? Yun, Pythagorean theorem. So r, or the resultant, or the distance from the point of origin up to your final destination is equal to di ba, c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. So kung baka c squared, tanggalan ko na lang ang squared niya daan, that would be the square root of what? Of your summation x squared, or a squared plus the summation of y squared. Okay, Pythagorean theorem lang ito. If this is summation of your x and this is your summation of y, this a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Para makuha c, is take the square root of both sides. So that would be 58.16 squared plus 11.756 squared. You take the square root of that value. You have the value of your r being equal to what? 57.40. There nga yung degrees, sorry. 57.40 knots or nautical miles, nm. Okay, and that's the distance. Ako pala ito mo distance. How about for your bearing? Since you already have these values, you can now compute for this angle. Okay, yung bearing mo is this angle lang right here. So that would be, I'll just write it here, the tangent of theta is equal to your summation of y over summation of x, or opposite over adjacent. That would be 11.756 all over 56.18. Your theta therefore is equal to what? What's the value of the angle? That is 11.82. This is now your bearing. This is your bearing and this is your distance. Diri pa ni bearing. Angle mo pala ito. Okay? Diri pa ito yung distance. So, your bearing should be, since we have this angle right here and the bearing starts from either north or south. Okay? So, the angle, di ba? We found the value of the angle theta being equal to 11.82. It's only the angle. The bearing, di ba, as discussed earlier, starts from either north or south. So, we need to subtract the angle from 90 in order to get this value. So, what is the bearing equal to? This is not the bearing pala, ha? This is just the angle. Okay, what's the bearing? That would be what? 90 minus 11.82. 78.18? Ano ba? That would be 78.18 degrees. What? Ano ti direction? North, west. This is now your bearing. Okay? Questions? Okay. So, ganito. So, ini nga mga particular, for these particular problems, okay, what you need to do is to compute for the summation of your x component and y component. By the way, these problems is very, these problems are very common. Labi na if you tackle engineering mechanics, which is in your second year. This problem is very common. Okay, so again, I'll be discussing how did we get this value right here. So yun, in this particular problems, we need to find the summation of your x component and the summation of your y component. Meaning, tanan niya x kang tanan niya y, hanimo mga distance with bearings. Or if this is force and direction. Kumbaga, we're talking about force. But for this problem, we're talking with the distance and the bearing. Okay? This is a vector because it has a magnitude and a direction, di ba? Therefore, we need to consider its magnitude and direction. So, yun. Let's break these two lines into two. So, for this one, iniya din for this one right here, it is due west. For this one, and the speed of your ship is 20 nautical miles per hour. and it traveled 2 hours. What do you think is the distance covered by the ship if its velocity is 20 nautical miles per hour after 2 hours? Edi 20 times 2. So, naging 40, yeah. So, try to notice. For this one, it is due west. Kumbaga, if you try to plot that one in the Cartesian coordinate plane, adayahit negative nga x-axis. Does this distance have a y component? Or may dabay niya angle with the x-axis? Waray, di ba? So, therefore, kung waray nimo value nimo angle with the x-axis, meaning, all of this component is your x component lang for this distance. Okay? Karang kabugusan nimo, karang x value lang ito niya. Pero, okay, kung may danat niya angle, therefore, you now have an x and y component. Nakuha. Kung waray angle, edi, it's either x component ito ya or y component. Pero kung may da angle, it now has an x component and y component. May dani mo x component and y component, and you have an angle of 54 degrees. How do you find the value of your x and y component? May di magsasine and cosine lang ako. Di ba? We've learned that one already in the previous mga example. So, how do we find the value of the x component, y component? Di ba? Ladder. Di ba? The ladder problem. So, what's the value of your, kumbaga, if this is 110, what's the value of your x component? And this is, what, 72 ba, no? Something. The value of x component is 110 cosine of 72. And the value of your y component is 110 sine of 72. Yun lang yun. Okay? And for this one, the value of your x component is what? Diba, amoy ninimo ladder problem kanina. Kung birikon mo lang ito, tipa kadi. So, that would be similar with this one. This is 110 and this is 72. Oh, ano man yan na didati mo, x component, yan y component. Your x component is this one. And your y component is this one. So, therefore, the value of your x component is 110 sine of 72. So, for this problem, the value of your x component is, what is the length or the distance between this one? That is from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. meaning 1 hour, and it travels 20 knots per hour. So, that would be 20. So, therefore, animo x component din would be 20 sine of 54. So, therefore, may danimo 40 ngan 20 sine of 54. 40 and 20 sine of 54. Okay? And the y component naman, the sum of all your y component. For this one, does this have a y component? May da waray. Waray, di ba? This one, does this have a y component? Okay, and what's the value of the y component? That would be this one, di ba? So that is 20 cosine of 54. 20 cosine of 54. So yun. Then using Pythagorean theorem, okay, the rest is history. Klaro? So yun. Last topic. Ito na. The last topic will be on harmonic motion, but we've already discussed mathematical modeling, di ba, in the previous lecture. So master na ninyo. I expect you must master this already. Okay, and for harmonic motion, we do not have shifts in the x and the y axis. So madali lat aton formula. So that would be a sine of omega t, but you're familiar with omega. This is actually b in our previous lectures. That is y is equal to a sine of bx minus c plus d, di ba? So the b helps us to find the period, or for in this topic they've used we're gonna be using, I mean, omega. Okay, so this is just similar to b. So, and where a and omega are real numbers, that omega is greater than 0, and yun yeah, your amplitude is the absolute value of your a. This one, the absolute value of your a. The period is 2 pi over b in the previous lecture. For this one, 2 pi over omega. And the frequency is the reciprocal of the 2 pi over b. The frequency is the reciprocal of the period. So, omega over 2 pi. Yun na yun. Madali lang. Mas pinaliit na version nung diniscuss natin earlier. Parang ganito na lang siya. Omega x. So, yun na lang. Okay? So, the question, ito, example. We are to consider a ball which is dropped from equilibrium. Okay? And is bobbing up and down on the end of the spring. Yun. Suppose that 10 centimeter is the maximum displacement that the ball moves vertically upward or downward from its equilibrium. And suppose further that the time it takes for the ball to move from its maximum displacement below zero to its maximum displacement above zero is 2 seconds. And we are to assume ideal conditions of perfect elasticity and no friction or air resistance. Meaning this will go on and on and on and on and on. Kaya wala air resistance and perfect elasticity. And we are to describe and draw the motion using a function. So either we're gonna use sine or cosine. Okay? But for this problem, so if we try to, yun nga, magsasolve na kita at problem. Okay, so we're gonna be solving the problem na. So yun, what is asked is we are to describe and draw the motion of draw the motion using a function. So we use either sine or cosine. From the problem, it says here that the ball is dropped from equilibrium. Meaning, at t is 0, meaning waray pa magtitikang ha, at t is 0, aniya displacement was 0. Meaning, waray pa ya magbaba mo yung wave. So, if you try to imagine that one, parang ganito yan. So, you have a ball and you have a spring. Okay? And bagat yung kakaptan nito yan, dida. This is the initial condition. At t is 0, d is 0. Meaning, waray pa niya displacement. Ngan pagbuhiin ni mo niya bula, itong abula, siyempre maunatan ni mo spring. Right? Okay? Pagbuhiin ni mo ito ngayon mo, abula, maunatan spring. Pag unat niya, mabalik ito. It will bob. Okay? Baga magbabalik-balik. So since we are to assume that we have an ideal condition of perfect elasticity and no friction and air resistance, baga magbibinalik-balik lang ito ya up and down. But in reality, it won't happen. Kay may naman kita air resistance ngan diri man perfect ang naton elasticity. So such time ma-stop talaga ito. It will go to the equilibrium at the initial condition. But for this particular problem, this will go on and on and on and on because again, we have perfect elasticity and no friction and air resistance oray gihapon. So this will go on and on and on and on. So for this one, for this particular problems, our goal in here is to draw and create a function. So for this one, it says here that before pala we go to the initial condition, for these particular problems, again, we graph this one as our x-axis being the time and the y-axis being the displacement. Okay? Diri angle ha? Diri angle. The x-axis is the time and the y-axis is the displacement. Okay? At t is 0, okay, meaning at initial condition, at t is 0, the displacement is 0. So, it's somewhere here. Okay, may danadaan kita clue. We now have already a clue what function are we going to use. Since the cosine function start at the maximum, dili kita magamitin cosine. We use sine because it start at the at 0, kumbaga. It's sine ada nati ka nga 0. Okay? Sine 0 is 0. Sine 90 is 1, di ba? Kumbaga aton value of sine. So as per initial condition, it says here that t is 0. Therefore, when t is 0, d is 0. So, therefore, adi kita din ma-start. And the function we're going to use is sine. So, ano itong graph natin sine? So, the graph of our sine function is somewhat similar to this one. Okay. So, again, when t is 0, the displacement is 0. And we're going to use the the sine function that looks something like this. And the function for that is equal to the function we're going to use is this one. D is equal to a sine of omega times the time. Okay? Ano na lang taton kulang din eh. Taton kulang, what we lack in here is the amplitude and omega. Okay? We're going to find these values using the problem. So, what does the problem say? So, it says here in the problem that the maximum displacement, the ball moves vertically upward or downward from its equilibrium is 10 centimeter. Meaning, our amplitude is 10 centimeter. Kaya mo ito natin maximum. Okay? So, kumbaga, at this point right here and this point right here, kumbaga, this D, the value of D at this point is 10. Kumbaga, ini, negative 10. Okay? Kumbaga, again, from our figure, if this is our spring, from equilibrium, the maximum distance, it iya pag-unat. Okay? This is, say, this is 10. Ano to? 10 cm. Okay? And ang minimum luwat niya nga distance pag compress from an imo equilibrium is 10 gihapon. Sorry, this is not drawn to scale ha. Okay, so 10 cm gihapon. Okay, pag unat niya, tika nga equilibrium 10 cm. Pag balik luwat niya pag compress, that is also 10 cm as said in the problem. So therefore, our amplitude or our A is equal to 10. And the highest points in these curves are 10. So our A in here is 10. Okay? Again, let's go back to the problem. Ano pa yung given? Suppose further that the time it takes for the ball to move from its maximum displacement below 0 to its maximum displacement above 0 is 2 seconds. Okay? Meaning, may kita period nyo daan. Naya kaniya, dida. It says here in the problem that from your the time it takes from the maximum distance below 0, which is this one, baga negative 10, below 0 to the maximum displacement above 0, which is 10. Okay, from here or from maximum to minimum or minimum to maximum, pareho letter. It takes what? That takes 2 seconds. Okay? It takes 2 seconds from your maximum to minimum or minimum to maximum. Okay? Again, kita niyo ha? Our x-axis is the time. The y-axis is the displacement. So therefore, we can say that the value of our omega is what? Maaram na kita ang distance sa naton kuan. Ang aton maximum to minimum. Okay, in the previous nga aton nga lecture, di ba? We found that it takes 1/2 of the period to travel from your maximum to your minimum or vice versa, minimum to your maximum. So, if it takes 2 seconds from your maximum to minimum, therefore your period is equal to what? Your period is equal to 4. Okay? And your period is also equal to what? 2 pi over b, di ba? That's 2 pi over b or 2 pi over omega. Therefore, what is the value of our omega? Our omega, therefore, if we have a period of 4, that is equal to 2 pi over 4. Or our omega is pi over 2. So, may na kita value natin A, may na kita value natin omega, we can now write our function. Our function, therefore, is equal to D is equal to 10 sine of 18. 10 sine of omega, which is pi over 2, times the time. This is now your function. And this is now your graph. Ito na yung graph mo, ito na yung function mo. Do you have any question? This is for the harmonic motion. Okay, ano't gamitin eh? How can we utilize this one? Say, if we try to find the displacement, kasi if we have the function, we can find the displacement at any time we want. Okay, so if our t is 0, try to substitute 0 in this one. So our d is what? Sin 0 is 0. 0 times 10 is 0. Okay, meaning correct, tama. Or if we try to say that our t is what? Let's say 3 seconds. What's the value of our d? At 3 seconds, what's the value of our d? By the way, this is in radian, ha? This is 90 degrees. Negative 10. Oh, okay. So, ito na yun. To be negative 10. How about when t is 2? What's the, yun. How about when t is 4? 0 din. How about t is 1? 10. Yun na yun. Yun na yun. Bisan ano nga, gamit kasi the use of your function, if you try to input different values of your time, you can get your displacement. Baka makapredict ka kung ano displacement given at a certain time. Diba? In our previous example, we find that we can find the value of the depth of the water given at any given time. So, at 9 p.m. or 12 p.m. So, yun. Amo it gamit para ka makapredict hit values at any given different condition. Ito, next example. We are given, ito na, given na nga daanan niyo mo equation, niyo mo function. D is equal to 6 times the cosine of 3 pi over 4 times t. We are to find the maximum displacement. So, for letter A, ano pa man, the maximum displacement, edi the amplitude. What's the amplitude? 86. Tapos, letter B da yun. What is the frequency? By the way, it was discussed earlier that we have our period is equal to 2 pi over omega. And the reciprocal of your period is your frequency. The reciprocal of your period is your frequency. Okay? So, what's your frequency? Try to find the period, anay. So, the period is equal to what? 2 pi over omega. Your omega is this one. 3 pi over 4. 3 pi over 4. Saka mo na lang itong igbaw nga daan. This one cancels out. So, you have 8, 3. Okay? And, your frequency therefore is equal to omega over 2 pi. So, omega, what is your omega? Your omega is 3 pi over 4 over 2 pi. Okay, sige. So, 3 pi over 8 pi. I-cancel. So, your frequency is 3/8. Or the reciprocal of your period. Yun. Do you have any question? Meaning, your frequency is 3/8. May da kuno, you have a 3/8 cycle per unit of time. Since the unit of time, okay, already din nagsiring. Okay, pero this is in seconds. You have 3/8 of a cycle per second. That is your frequency. Gaano gaano kadamo ang cycle nga nahihimo kada second. That is your frequency. Okay? So, next for letter C naman, we are to find the value of our D when our T is 4. So, just substitute. The substitution lang yan. 3 pi over 4. When your time is 4, this one cancels out. Your D is equal to 6 times the cosine of 3 pi. What is the cosine of 3 pi? Pi, 0, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi. Negative 6. 3 pi. 3 pi. Diba? 0. Tapos pi. 2 pi. Edi 3 pi nga di. So, cosine of 3 pi is negative 1 times 6. Edi negative 6. Okay? And for letter D, what is the least positive value for T for which D is 0? O kung D is 0, edi yun na yun. 6 times the cosine of 3 pi over T. Okay? Times time. Anong papabiling what is the least value of time? So, ini an unknown. And our D is 0. So, if you try to substitute that one, 6 cosine of 3 pi over 4 times T. Okay, how do we do this one? So, divide both sides by 6. Divide both sides by 6. For this one cancels out. So, 0 over 6, 0 lagi hapon. 0 is equal to cosine of 3 pi over 4 times T. Okay, so arc cosine of 0. Or, yeah, that's pi over 2. Pi over 2 is equal to, di ba, nag-arc cosine ka naman. So, arc cosine of 0, the arc cosine of the cosine cancels out. So, 3 pi over 4 times T. This one cancels out, this one cancels out. Okay, so iningad to. So, magiging T is equal to what? Magiging 4 over 6 or 2/3. What is this one? Cosine. So, adin natin kang maximum. So, the maximum is 6. And the minimum is negative 6. And, ano pa? Period. Period is 8/3. So, from here up to here, that distance is 8/3. Okay, kung waray na pakiana, thank you for attending the lecture and hope to see you again next meeting. Salamat. Bye-bye.